He owns a tiny travel bookstore. She owns the whole planet's attention.
When a celebrity walks into his life, love becomes a public act, full of cameras, awkwardness, and heart.
1999's Notting Hill asks, can ordinary tenderness survive extraordinary fame?
Spoiler, it's messy, vulnerable, and still somehow very hopeful.
I'm Heit.
And I'm Cheri.
And you've discovered Axiom Amnesia.
We want to thank all of the supporters who helped to make this video possible. If you want your name to appear alongside these contributors, make a one-time donation of $5 or more via our website at axiom.app, Cash App, or you can head on over to patreon.com/axiomamnesia to enjoy all of the benefits of becoming a monthly subscriber. The executive producer of this video is Titian Greer-Kuntz, who is receiving this deep dive on demand as a birthday gift. Happy birthday, Titian! We'll tell you more about how you can gift an Axiom Amnesia's deep dive on demand later.
If you haven't seen Notting Hill, there will be spoilers in this video.
So Notting Hill is this movie, in case you don't know, it's from 1999, and it is one of these, I would call it like, even though it's at the end of the 90s, like a rom-com, just this romantic comedy. And there had been a slew of these romantic comedies starring a whole bunch of people. This one happens to star both Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts. Now, if you're younger, you don't realize how big of a star Julia Roberts was. I mean, you see her around every once in a while, and she was a huge star by the time she got her Oscar. But prior to that, she was really like the, just a box office draw, Pretty Woman and all of these other movies that she played in from a really quite a young age, young adulthood, right? And so that's kind of the backdrop for this film. And the other thing is the film is set basically in London. We see the whole thing in London, which for, people from the United States is a little bit of a different feel. But around this same time, one of the films that this reminds me a lot of is another rom-com, Love Actually. And then at the near around the same time, we also had like the Bridget Jones Diary movies and stuff. So all of these,
You've Got Mail.
Yeah. So you had all of these rom-coms, from the 90s. And this is one of the later ones that was in the 90s. That's it. We talked about the cast. Of course, we have Hugh Grant, who is playing William Thacker, and he's this bookshop owner, and he's just this awkwardly lovable kind of guy. And if I mention, like, Hugh Grant was not, to me, like the traditional leading man, but for a moment in time in the 90s, he really popped up, and we saw him in quite a few things. And, for a British actor, I think that was a lot to break into Hollywood and really, and be one of the big names and stuff.
Yeah. You know how I know Hugh Grant?
How?
From the film About a Boy, which was 2002.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have Julia Roberts playing Anna Scott. And a little background on Julia Roberts. I mean, she had been around for a long time, but I actually knew her brother, Eric Roberts, as an actor, in the 80s before I ever, and maybe he was around before the 80s, but, as a kid in the 80s, I remember him. And I remember seeing him before I ever saw Julia Roberts, in kind of some of the young adults type movies and, coming of age movies. And, obviously the biggest one that was early in her career was Pretty Woman. But she played in a bunch of stuff around that time.
Want us to cover your favorite movie ASAP? A one-time contribution of just $50 or more to Axiom Amnesia gets you a deep dive on demand, a 30-minute discussion on any film you choose.
It's easy. Step 1, send $50 via our website, axiom.app, where you can pay via card, Apple Pay, or you can pay directly via Cash App at $Axiom Amnesia. See the links below. Step 2, tell us your movie, email, the name you want to appear on screen, and what kind of deep dive you want. General, a specific character, a particular aspect of the film, etc. Step 3, watch your deep dive on demand with your name listed as executive producer.
Lock in your deep dive on demand today and hurry. Spots are limited.
This offer is not valid for filmmakers or distributors, subject to availability and terms apply. So let us get to our summary of what actually happens in Notting Hill. So when the film opens, we see this montage of Julia Roberts' character, Anna Scott. She is this huge movie star. So we get to see like this montage of her, her life, in front of the paparazzi in film. She just is living this very public lifestyle. And so that's what you see as the beginning credits are coming on. And then that's juxtaposed against William Thacker, who is, played by Hugh Grant. And he lives in London, and he's talking about his life in the little neighborhood that he lives in, which he calls a small village. Not a hamlet like we always joke about, but anyway, Notting Hill, right? So this is this small village that's in London, and the people know each other. He knows the names. He kind of knows the backstory of the people. And so it really is kind of a community. It's very personal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then we also find out that his wife had left him for this guy who looks like Harrison Ford. So he's single, and, divorced single guy or whatever. And so he says it was another hopeless Wednesday. So his life was also very mundane and just day to day. He wasn't happy in his world. He was just kind of putting one foot in front of the other. And he talks about the day that would change his life forever. And so he owns this travel bookshop. I never even heard of a travel bookshop. I've heard of little bookstores and different things, but I never heard of a bookstore that was just for travel books. Have you?
No, but if you're going to London, you're probably just, going through. You're probably a world traveler, right? So that's the thing about the movie being set there. And then from the American perspective of, we never see movies in the UK and London, right? If it's going to be somewhere else, it's probably going to be in, maybe Central, South America, those sort of Asia, it's never like just the quote, our American cousins, right?
Right.
You never, and that's what's so weird about this. It's like, wait, why when they do Hollywood productions, the UK just seems so foreign.
Yeah. So I feel like we also are never really immersed in the culture of wherever they are, because they're usually like, oh, we're in Mexico at a resort. So you're in places where there's just a little hint that you're someplace else. The background music they'll play. If you're supposed to be in Paris, they're going to show you a shot of the Eiffel Tower and play a little Parisian music in the background. You know what I mean? But you don't feel immersed in the culture of wherever you're supposed to be, which was very different in this film, because I felt like, hey, I'm in London.
So you think so? I think it's very detached, right? So first thing we notice is, I have a friend who is now in the UK somewhere, right? And he's posting about driving on the left side of the road, right? And it's just like, we didn't really see that. And when they show it, you can't really tell.
But then I felt like I saw it in the way that the streets looked, in the architecture and the way that the houses are set up. And
yeah, but nothing disorients you like the most thing of traffic
driving on
moving.
The wrong. Yeah. I suppose that's true. So then Anna comes into the bookshop, and she's, got some big sunglasses or whatever on. So she's pretty low key, even though she's this big star. She comes in by herself, and she's just looking around or whatever, and they have like a small interaction, but he is clearly smitten. It was unclear to me whether he knew who she was from the first moment he saw her, or he's just watching his store and he just was intrigued by this woman who comes into his store, because he doesn't get a whole lot of business in that bookshop, and it's not doing well, he talks about. So so then that happens. They have this interaction, and he's, kind of like, but she leaves and everything like that. So then later that same day, he's walking down the street, and he actually bumps into her, and he spills a drink. I think it was orange juice on her while walking down the street. Then he does the strangest thing ever. Maybe it was cool in 1999, but he's like, well, come to my house, which is, so that to clean up. Right. And she actually thinks for a second, and then she decides to go. But in their conversation where they're talking about this, I thought the funniest thing was, because here we're talking about the culture. He says, oh, well, my house is, I live over the street, and she's like, over the street? Give me a distance to the house. I need it in yards. And you know how Julia Roberts' accent can be very American at times. She's like, I need it in yards. And then he says, oh, it's about, and he says however many yards, but it's pretty close by. So she goes to his house and actually changes and cleans herself up or whatever. And then she comes downstairs in this sequin outfit, which is clearly like for the late night, not for the daytime. But he offers her, he wants her to stay because like he knows
he's trying everything to keep her in his apartment.
Yes. And so he's offering her tea and she, is declining the tea or whatever. So she leaves and she comes back after a couple of seconds. She's like, oh, I forgot my other bag because she had been shopping. And so then they just look in each other's eyes and then she just kisses him on the lips out of the blue after this prolonged eye contact. And then everything is always ruined by
the roommate Spike.
Yes,
he comes
William's
in,
roommate.
But before he even come in, William is just like, "I'm sorry, but there's no excuse for him because you got to apologize in advance."
Spike is just a nut. And so he's a complete weirdo, but like you realize as the film goes on, like he's this harmless kind of nice guy, well-intentioned. He's just, a weirdo. So she tells him though, before she turns to leave, she's basically telling him, don't tell anybody about this encounter, and then she just leaves again. And so next thing we see Spike and William watching, one of Annie's cheesy movies, some cheesy romance or whatever that night. And he's just like, he's literally falling in love with her from afar because now he's starting to get a little obsessed.
Yeah, well, so it's much easier today, right? Even if it's not a star, you could just go on Instagram and just scroll the feed because people posting a whole bunch for hours.
But back then it's like, oh, let me go watch one of her movies or whatever. So then he's talking to his roommate some point later, a few days later, and his roommate is like, oh yeah, some American girl named Anna called for you a couple days ago. And he's like, what? Because again, his roommate Spike is just nuts. And so he's like, she wanted you to call her at the Ritz, but she gave some type of fake name. I don't remember the name though. Like the roommate is just totally like whatever. And he's like, what do you mean? So he calls her back. And then he winds up going to the hotel to meet her or whatever. He got all these flowers and everything. And this guy is riding the elevator up with him. And then he soon realizes the guy is going to her hotel suite too. And he's like, well, yeah, okay. Then it opens up and there's tons of people, a bunch of hustle and bustle in this room because she's basically doing a press junket for her upcoming film or the film that's just come out, right? So he goes in there and he's got to pretend to be a journalist. And I don't know why I thought it was so funny. He looks over and sees his magazine and what is it? Horse and Hound or
Horse and Hound? Yeah.
I think it was Horse and Hound magazine. He's like, yeah, I'm here, for this. Like, why would somebody from Horse and Hound be interviewing her about this movie, or whatever. But anyway, so he gets his couple of minutes with her alone and, they talk or whatever. And she's like, I wanted to apologize for kissing you to make sure that you're fine about it, And they talk a little bit and then he goes in to try to kiss her again. And then her manager or the aide helping her walks in. So every time they are just in the moment and are going to feel it, something happens to interrupt it, but they are definitely feeling each other at this point in the movie. So now he's got to pretend. So what's hilarious is they're like, oh, okay, you're done with her. Come on in and interview the rest of the actors. So he has to pretend to be this journalist. So to me, it was very funny, like the extra stuff going around the love story. I mean, it lived up to being definitely a rom-com. And the first guy who he's interviewing is actually the actor who plays Lester Freeman on The Wire.
Clark Peters.
Yes. So he legit actually interviews a slew of actors. And then at the end, he comes back to her because she calls him back in or whatever. And she calls him in before he leaves. And then she's like, oh, well, I canceled my evening plans or whatever. And he's like, oh, well, I'd love to do something with you, but it's my sister's birthday. And she's like, well, I'll be your date. So, yeah. So then she just decides, they can just go out. She sort of invites herself because she really wants to kind of connect with this guy. And so they show up to dinner and then it's setting the stage. So dinner is at his friend's house and his friend has a wife. And then the friend's wife happens to be in a wheelchair. And we later find out that the friend's wife had just basically in this random act slipped, fell down the stairs and then, broke her part of her back or whatever and then winds up in this wheelchair. And so how her life has been changed by this, but they all try to everybody's just trying to get along with whatever cards that life has dealt them, right? And so the dinner is burning, because the husband is cooking the dinner. So the dinner is burning or whatever. And, then finally his sister arrives for her own birthday party. And she is really eccentric. She's just like, oh my gosh. And she recognizes Anna. And then she just starts fangirling. She's like, we can be best friends and everything. I mean, it was so awkward. And then after that, the sisters, we've got other people there. One guy comes in. He doesn't recognize, what was his name?
Who, Bernie?
Bernie, yes. One of the friends, Bernie, comes in and he doesn't recognize Anna. And so, he calls himself having clever conversation with her. And he's like, yeah, so what do you do? And she's like, well, I'm an actor. And they're like, oh, I've got a friend who is an actor. They don't make very much. And he starts going down this road of complaining about how actors don't make any money and blah, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, can't be that much money, And then he's like, so how much did you make for your last, film or whatever that you did? She's like, 15 million. And then he's like, oh, he feels totally stupid. So then he goes back with the friends while she's in the bathroom. And he is basically realizing or, told that she is a famous movie star and whatever. And he's just like, oh, I feel like an idiot. So anyway, we see all of these awkward things. And I'm like, is William a magnet for awkward, weird people? Because his sister is very weird. All of these other characters just seem like, and maybe life is weird like that too. I don't know. But
yeah, but it reminds me of, who is the filmmaker? Is it Mike Leigh? The guy who was doing all the movies about kind of Thatcherism and the movements in the UK. He's a British filmmaker, and he just made a whole bunch of movies about, those sort of things.
Well, there's certainly
and
like
the characters are all weird. And one of the recent ones was the movie Horror Truths, right? And the characters are always weird, or they got some awkwardness and stuff like that. We just watched a few of their films.
Like part of British humor, right?
Yeah.
And maybe, culturally, because I see that a lot in those, different, even the TV shows, or I remember like, other shows from back in the day where you'd see it and it just is a different brand of humor with stuff. But I really enjoy it because a lot of it is not just the physical comedy, but it's actually setting up some weird, awkward situations. And probably the closest that we really got to that in TV and film was maybe like Seinfeld to me. Where these weird things would happen. So the Larry David brand of humor. Yeah, So, but anyway, so they, go on and they have dinner and whatever. So after dinner, there is one brownie left. And I think it's Bernie who's like, I am going to award this to have, this brownie to the person who has like the basically the saddest story, the saddest life story. And, but before that, I think Anna was feeling very awkward, like, oh, these people now they're going to treat me like this famous star. But then by the end of the dinner, she saw how weird everybody was and she just fit right in with them. And I think she started to enjoy her time with them. So this is the point where they're having this brownie discussion. And so the one who has the saddest life is going to win the brownie. And they go around and the first one to talk is William's friend, his wife's friend. Well, no. Max. William's friend's wife, yes.
The wife.
Or yes. So she winds up giving like a compelling story because they talk about the other characters. But then she gives a compelling story talking about how, she can't have children and, how she's in this wheelchair and stuff like that. And it's just like, oh. And there's this weird, awkward moment where you're feeling like, this is going to get too sad for a rom-com. Like, what is this? But then you don't know what's real and what's not. So then the next thing you know, Anna, they're like, okay, well, you wind up getting it. They talk about William and how sad his life is, which is giving Anna some insight into, how other people perceive William. And then in the end, they were going to award it. But then she's like, hold on, I want my turn to say how sad my life is. And everybody's looking kind of like, okay, you're this big, huge movie star that's rich and has everything in the world. So how could your life be sad? But anyway, she starts telling this story and she goes on and on about, essentially just what it's like, what fame is like for her, and how that is a sad state of being. And so we're wondering if like she really believes this, or is she being an actress in this moment? And she makes reference at different times to, well, I'm not really that good of an actress, right?
Yeah, and she basically ends with, one day they would discover I can't act.
Yes.
That's her fear.
Yes. So in the end, they all laugh because they basically, kind of accuse her of BS. And then that's it. So then after that, they go ahead and they leave the dinner, they leave their friends behind, and it's just William and Anna, and they are going to go for a walk wherever they're going to go, right? And they hear, before they can even get out of earshot of the door, after the door shuts, like the friends are cheering because they're like, we got, they're like, fanning out because they had been playing it cool up to that point. So then they're going on their walk, and then there's this garden, kind of like a big park or whatever, and it's closed for the day, but they want to go. And she's like, well, of course she's famous. The rules are not the rules for somebody like this. So she's like, well, climb on over. So he attempts to climb this fence, and he can't climb the fence. And it just looks like so crazy. So finally, she decides, she's like, okay, he's like, oh, you're going to climb it. So she climbs the fence, and she gets to the other side, and she's telling him like, yeah, get yourself over and come on. Soon as he makes it over the fence, she kisses him again. So like we said, they're in this park, that's this park garden kind of area that's closed after dark. So they're the only ones there. And she sees this bench that is dedicated to a couple who's passed on. But, they were a couple for life, and they stayed together. And, she's kind of longing love. So she sits down on this bench, and he doesn't immediately join her, which I thought was weird for, like a guy liking a girl liking a guy. He walks away from her while she's sitting on this bench. And I guess this is just supposed to add to his awkwardness. What do you think?
Yeah, but that's his whole character the whole time leading up, right? You want some tea and all this. He was very awkward. He couldn't make the advances and stuff. He ain't have no riz.
Yeah, he had zero riz, no charisma. And so she calls him over, and finally, when she calls him over, then he comes over and he joins her there. And, so then we see that she was supposed to go back to the US, but she stayed behind in London to spend time with him. So we get this montage of them in a restaurant and, all these other places where they're spending time together. And in this restaurant, though, they overhear a table of men just talking about Anna in this demeaning way, because they're like, she's hot, she's this, she's, and they're basically saying she's like easy in a way. She's not this kind of, she's going to be easy. And at first she was amused by the conversation because, she probably hears people talk about her all the time. But then when it takes a seedy turn, then you could tell she feels awkward. He feels awkward, but he decides he's going to confront the table of men. So William goes over to the table where they are, because they can't see that Anna is literally right there by them. He goes over and he's like, why are you talking to her like this? Blah, 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 blah. Right. And so they just shoo him off. And then so he gets up and she's like, oh, well, thank you for trying and all that. And they were going to leave. And then they were going to leave. And then she's like, no. And so she turns around and she confronts them in the most comedic of ways, because she doesn't go off on them. She's like, oh, hey, guys, they're like shocked, ready to choke on their food at this point, because guess what? It's actually the Anna that they've been talking about this whole time. And so she says something, and then she, of course, demeans the size of their, male manhoods, because that's just always going to be the biggest insult that you can give to a man in those moments. And then she walks away and she's feeling pretty good about herself. But one thing I'll say about Julia Roberts in this moment playing Anna is that she always does this kind of tell them about themselves moment in most of her movies, especially back then, whether it's Erin Brockovich or, anybody else she plays. There's this moment where she walks in this like weird way up to a person and she's like, da 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 da. And she has this kind of very nasally voice and she tells them off. And that, I don't know, maybe that's like a signature Julia Roberts thing.
So I think of like Julia Roberts as a very regular looking woman, right? And I think so this she's just another person thing that happened at dinner is just kind of like what happened when her monologue at the dinner table for the birthday party. So I think the idea probably revolutionary in the late 90s about how, today, we care more about celebrities as people and they have feelings in that same sort of way, sort of like what we seen what happened with Britney Spears and stuff, right? And this was even before that happened, right? So yeah, I think that that's kind of what they kind of was trying to force us into having sympathy for this character before they drop the bomb on us that's going to happen in the next scene.
Yeah.
But like, I think her looks kind of play into that, because I think too, like, who I would think one of my favorite actresses, Jodie Foster, could have been in the role too. And then like,
so
it's them three.
Are you saying actresses that you don't look at as like super traditional beauties?
Yeah, they just look like regular people, right? And that's kind of what they trying to give off, that, this actress is just a regular person, but you're not going to pick, I don't know, whoever they think. You're not going to pick Anna Nicole Smith. I don't know. I'm just throwing a name out there, right? To play this role, to be like, well, I'm just regular.
You know what I think too? It's also the idea that, okay, if you're this leading woman, then you are automatically beautiful, whereas maybe there is something unconventional in a way about the beauty of, Julia Roberts, versus some of the other people. And I don't know if there's
but it's a few of them I put in there, like her, Julia Roberts, Jodie Foster, Helen Hunt, they all kind of have this similar sort of look. I don't know about the young ones
not
today.
Looking alike per se, but just the kind of, I look like a normal, regular person who you might be able to meet, So, and I also think unconventional features, especially Julia Roberts, right? Because she has, for the time and whatever, her lips are a little bigger.
What's the redhead one? Meryl Streep, right?
Meryl Streep, yeah. And but see, depending on the era, and I was watching something on social media where they were talking about, it was something for women to, I don't know, feel better about their looks somehow. But they were like, no, you're not hot. You're just not hot for this time. And then they would take your looks and, be like, oh, you look like you're from, this era. You look like someone in, from the Baroque era of, you look like somebody from here or there. And then they would hold up, I don't know, some old painting or whatever, or they'd say, you look very old Hollywood. So in other words, you're not hot for today, but you would have been hot if you were born, 2,000 years ago. If you were born, 500 years ago, 600 years ago, you look just like this woman who was the epitome of beauty for that particular time period. And so I think that may be a little bit of what we see, and then like how they've studied beauty and all that, the symmetry of your face and, whatever.
Very subjective. So.
I think so. So, but yes, I get what you're saying. And there are things that about Julia Roberts, even when you watch her interviews, and maybe this is her acting, I don't know, but she seems very much like somebody who would be a very nice person to know, whereas there are other actors who just, you're like, when you see them in an interview, you go, yeah, they don't have that kind of appeal, but maybe that's part of her brand, the girl next door sort of feel to things. So she invites William back to her hotel room after the date because he walks her back to the Ritz or whatever. And she's like, you want to come up? And he's just like, and I don't think he answers the first time. And then because she asks him 2 times and she's like, so you want to come up? And then he's finally like, yes. So there, he's thinking, hey, I'm about to get lucky. He's getting excited because she's like, well, give me a couple minutes. Because, she wants to freshen up or whatever before he gets up there, So she goes ahead of him. And then he walks up to her room by himself. And he gets there. And she comes to the door and she's like, you've got to leave right now. And he's like, what? What are you saying? And her boyfriend, she's like, my boyfriend is here. Her boyfriend, she has a whole boyfriend from America who is in the room. He is played by none other than Alec Baldwin.
Bruh. Yeah, so they did a good job. So like, if I'm at the standpoint of William, right? I'm falling for this character, right? Oh, I'm starting to like her and stuff. She's cool, I don't see all the glitz and the glam of the fame and the fortune and stuff, and then we get to, I feel just like him when my boyfriend here and Alec Baldwin just walk out. I'm like, what?
I know. It was just a shock. It was like, wait, what? You had a man the whole time? So then it gets worse because then William pretends to be room service because that's who she tells. her boyfriend that, this is room service. So he plays along and he's like, yeah, can you get this? And while you're at it, do that. Da, 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 da. And she's like, oh, I don't think that's his role or whatever. And he's like, no, I'll go ahead. And he's like, yeah, and empty that garbage. It's just crazy. And so he's given all of these tasks by her boyfriend, who turns out to be this famous actor as well, right? And then he's making the point, he's like, what'd you order or whatever? And she's saying what she's about to order or something. And then he's like, well, don't overdo it because we can't have people saying that she's the fat girlfriend of a famous actor. And then we realize, like, this guy is not, he's famous, but he's just like a butthole, And so I was thinking to myself,
they always have to do that so you won't feel bad about it. We talk about this all the time.
Yes.
In these, these romantic relationships that they have in movies.
So they have an awkward moment before William leaves. And, she's like, I don't know what to say. And he's like, well, goodbye is traditional. Because basically, clearly, this ain't what I thought it was. So he leaves or whatever. And so he's all sad when he's taking the bus home. And they play Al Green while he's on the bus and feeling sad. And he can't believe that this has happened to him. So then we see him going to see her film and he's looking sad or whatever, really kind of mourning her loss. And then the question I had was she just having a good time with William, or was she being real at the time? Like, was she just going to go back to her life in America after her fling with him that night? Like,
or is with the actor the fling too, right? We got the... who say she wasn't really in love, right? So when we think of these celebrities and stuff, we just think their lives are like ours. But do they even know each other? Do they even spend time together and all that sorts of thing? It's just kind of like they just quote in a relationship.
Well, and possibly. I think that they have so much money a lot of times in such busy lives that they don't have to
see each other.
Physically be with that person nearly as much as somebody who's just like a regular middle class person. So I think that it could make getting along maybe a little easier if you're like, yeah, we're dating, but half the year you're away or doing something else. And so really it's kind of like you just hook up every once in a while and then you live separate lives. Versus people who, live together, sleep together every night and see each other every day, that kind of setup. So, but I don't know, like back to the question of what were Anna's intentions with him, and I think she was confused and didn't know. And maybe she was surprised because she seemed like she was a romantic, right?
But see, that's what I'm saying. She's made an actual connection with somebody versus somebody who she may have not had connection with. Mm-hmm. Right. So when she seen him in contrast with her boyfriend, when she seen him the first time, what was he doing? It was a guy he caught in his bookstore stealing. Right. And then he basically like, I'll just give you a chance to put this thing back. And then basically not even worry about it, let you go about your merry way, right? Mm-hmm. So she's seeing some sort of humanity in this guy versus we see what we see of the boyfriend where he just basically like, don't get fat.
Yeah. And so this is her, don't get fat. And then on top of that, how does he treat, quote unquote, the help, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, while you're at it, empty that garbage. And, he's very comfortable just not seeing the humanity in other people in his life. So there is this stark contrast. And I do think she was caught off guard because here she has been dreaming and longing and all of that, but she has never felt that. And maybe at this point she, it's a dream, it's a hope, it's a wish, but you don't necessarily know that you'll ever stare it in the face. And now here she is staring it in the face and she's got a complicated situation.
Right. So then William's friend starts to set him up on blind dates. Because, so they kind of fell out of love with her too. Uh-huh. In the same sort of way.
His friends were solid because they were like, yeah, we don't like her either.
And then he was basically comparing everybody to Anna, I think.
Mm-hmm. And nobody was going to measure up because he was still stuck on Anna. So then,
what's funny though? He started calling her the American.
The American. Yeah, that was hilarious too.
The American.
So he talks about having only loved 2 women before. And he names the first one. And then we find out it's implied that the second woman he loved is this wife of his friend who's in a wheelchair. And it's like, wait a minute, like this movie just brings out the bombshells. And I'm like, hold on. And so your best friend, who's still your best friend, who you still hang with today, winds up with this woman who you say you love. So and it's unclear what happened, right? Did they date or did they not? Or was he loving her from afar? And, how does this happen? But given how not aggressive he is, I could see him being like, I loved her the whole time. And his friend is the one who just asked her out and he never asked her out. I don't know how this happens. But somehow the movie, I feel like, is successful in not making us like hate his best friend or this woman who's his friend, the one that's in the wheelchair. They still remain these very empathetic characters, and also at this point they really are the gold standard couple goals in the movie, right? Because in spite of all of their adversity, she's in this wheelchair after this freak accident happened to her, blah blah blah, he still loves her very much, and we'll see a gesture of that later in the movie. But yeah, so that was just kind of like out the blue for me. Like, what? But anyway. So then the next thing we see is him walking down the street and there are tabloids of Anna. And basically she's on the newsstand. Every newsstand has something about her. And so essentially what happened was Anna had taken some pictures in her youth before she was famous, when she was broke and all of that. And the person who took the pictures sold these pictures, and then she also was, unbeknownst to her, being filmed at the same time the pictures were taken. And so now it makes it look like she has, one of those sex tapes out.
Yeah. And it's all in the tabloids, the UK British tabloids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So then Anna shows up at his house.
Bruh, crying.
Yeah. And she's like, the photos were taken. So she tells this whole story of what happened, right? And so she's like, I didn't know where to go. The hotel is surrounded with the paparazzi. And so she came to William's house, and William welcomes her. And we understand at this point that it's been months since they've seen each other last. And the roommate comes, the roommate doesn't know she's there. She's in there taking a bath, and the roommate comes home, Spike, and he's looking at the tabloid, maybe some of the pictures, right? And he turns, and he's about to, use the restroom. He turns around and she's like soaking in the tub, and she's like, hi. And he's just like, what? Thank God, because I thought he was going in the bathroom to maybe, with these pictures. So anyway, Anna, apologizes to William about her boyfriend showing up. And then we find out that Anna has broken up with her boyfriend, I think, before this scandal even happens. So then more time spent together. Her and William, practice a script, and then they just start to bond. But this time it's more as friends, right? They're not crossing the line, even though there's clearly chemistry and a spark. So she later that night, because he gives her his bedroom, she goes down to where he's sleeping on the couch. And basically they just wind up going to bed together after that. That's basically what happens. And then the next morning she makes this statement, and she's like, men go to bed with the dream, like when you're famous, men go to bed with the dream and they wake up to reality. And she was saying that because she's like, you know me as this famous star. So you go to bed with the big name, and then
Shut up, you came over here crying.
To the real person. So that's what she said. And so she's like, basically, is that what's happened to you, right? This is the morning after. And he's like, you're even lovelier this morning, or something like that, or you couldn't be lovelier. So he's basically saying that, no, the real you is even more impressive to me than your image or whatever. So she asked, well, can I stay a little bit longer? He's like, stay forever. I'm like, okay, look at you.
I know women would like that.
I know. It was you guys know, I love a good romance, whether it's a novel, whether it's a story. And this did appeal to me in that way. So then he goes downstairs and he opens the door, because they're just getting up or whatever. He opens the door in his underwear, and it's the paparazzi. And this is what I think is so stupid, because he goes up and she comes down the stairs after he closes the door. And she's like, what's going on? Who was at the door? And then he lets her open the door.
Even say anything, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, what? he lets her open the door. So now he's been photographed in his underwear. And then she opens the door and she's photographed in his shirt, clearly looking like, things have happened. So it's the implication. So then the roommate, Spike, is walking around in his drawers and he comes downstairs and I'm like, what in the world? So he comes downstairs and he opens the door. They're like, he tells him, don't open the door. Paparazzi is out there. I wouldn't go out there. What is he? The first thing he does is goes and opens the door. And then when he sees all these people taking pictures, he starts posing. So imagine what this looks like to the world. Anna is there, in some compromising position after these photos have come out, and not one, but two guys are there. Scantily clad.
1999.
Yeah, this was a problem. They were still slut shaming back then. So Anna is really, really
she
mad.
Crashed out.
She crashes out. She's blaming Spike for telling the paparazzi, saying he wanted to make a few bucks, and so he called the paparazzi. And she's like, for goodness sake, I have a boyfriend. And then he's like, you got a boyfriend? Wait, I thought we'd been down that road. She's like, as far as they are concerned, right? Because it isn't public that she's broken up with her actor boyfriend from before. So, she just crashes out. She's mad at him. And then she just leaves hastily or whatever.
Oh, so it's kind of like Swiss Beats.
What you mean?
Where they say that Alicia Keys was over there before they broke up. You can't just come back and be like, well, we weren't together.
You was at the crib.
We weren't together at the time that y'all had seen us together.
Yeah, that was complicated. So, yeah. But William does tell her beforehand, this is crazy behavior. He's like, why are you acting like this? Because he's just surprised that she just is flipped out. And he tells her, he's like, my best friend slipped and is in the wheelchair for the rest of her life.
Yeah, because her privilege was showing. She was just talking about how bad and terrible this is for a super famous rich actress, right?
Yeah.
And then
he said, have perspective.
Yeah.
And she's basically, her rebuttal to that is, well, you've been living with this, paparazzi and this fame for one day or whatever. I've been living with it for 10 years. And I kind of didn't like the silence that was left there with this mic drop to make it like that was truly valid and a good comparison to this woman. That's kind of
what the film is about, and that's what filmmakers want to show their perspective too, right? You know what I'm saying? Because these actors and stuff are their friends, right? So y'all need, that's all. Oh, look, she's just a regular person. They deal with so much, and your lives might be terrible, but theirs are equally as terrible, right? Evidenced by the birthday scene and everything that we really see about, because most of this is about what's happening to her negatively, and for him, it's about he just needs love. Right, and when you ain't got nothing, that's basically what they try to sell you. All you need is love, and that's all that is in his arc, really. And she has all this other stuff to overcome, and basically he has nothing but to try to get love.
Yep.
But then Anna, she goes all the way off the deep end, just basically like, I'll regret this forever. Like, dang.
Yeah, like she was very salty. So then she leaves, and William then goes and asks Spike, like, did you? Because, she's saying that you called the paparazzi. And he's like, well, I might have told a few people. So clearly, to me, Spike wasn't trying to make money and call the paparazzi and get paid. He just was so excited. He just told a couple people she was over there. And then, maybe those people told, right? I don't think he directly called the paparazzi. Do you?
No, he said that's what he did, right? He
I just called a few people.
But you can't tell one person.
You can't tell anybody. That's the thing. Something is going on. You can't tell anybody if you want it to stay a secret.
Yeah.
So then they play another amazing song, Ain't No Sunshine. William is sad because she's gone. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone.
Bruh, so this is a long time lapse shot that goes through all the seasons quite eloquently.
I thought that was amazing. Yeah.
It reminds me of later on, there's a I don't know the history of a shot like this, but Scarface's video, the rapper, On My Block. It's done like this, and it's going through decades, though, of, I guess you could say, Black history, kind of, and it's in more focused in Houston, right, where he's from. So that's what it reminds me of, right? So it's very interesting how they do it, because I always into, film and how how you able to edit these shots? Like, what was the one? Was it Dunkirk? They was like,
yeah,
this is
like
just
the whole
one shot.
movie is one shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that with the music and everything is a real nice touch. But it shows that it's, this time has been changing, right? But then, she is back in town, right? And he goes over to her set or whatever, where she's filming. And it's like nothing changed but time. You know what I'm saying?
Because the way this all happens is initially, William is given an opportunity to hook up with her and he doesn't take it because his sister comes, is like, oh, you've been so sad for months or whatever. Hey, I got her number. Or Spike got her number from somebody, her agent's number.
Her agent, yeah.
In both in both London and New York or whatever. And so, you can get in contact with her since you've been so sad, but he throws that number away. So he just, gets rid of the opportunity. And I'm like, why does he do this? In this moment, I don't understand it, but it gets explained later. So yeah, so he goes to her set, and she's like, well, come on in and whatever. And she's just, So, and this is 6 months, later after their last encounter when this happens. And so she comes out of her trailer because at first they're not going to let him see her, but he shows up at her set. And she comes out of her trailer just in time to see him standing there. She comes over and she's like, well, wait for me after so we can talk.
Yeah. And he's like, what am I supposed to do? She's like, drink tea. So it seems like this is going good. They did a good job with stringing us along with this. And because the drink tea is reference to what he was always saying, a little quirky thing, right?
You want some tea? You want some,
Yeah. So she like, yeah, I don't know, drink tea. Oh, they about to get back together,
like,
right?
Ooh. We get excited. And William is listening to the dialogue because they give him these headsets so he can listen while they record. But they're not filming the scene yet. They're just having small talk, Anna and her co-star. And so William's listening from afar and he overhears Anna say, basically refer to him as some guy from the past. And it's like he's looking like, what? And she's like, I don't even know what he's doing here. This is what she tells her co-star. And he hears this, he's just like, what? And I was thinking to myself, Anna, just say anything. You don't think, you told him to be around. Why would you think other people can hear what's being said? And you know this, even if you didn't know he was hearing it and you're so worried about what anybody will think, like, why would you be so reckless in your statements?
Because that's what you want them to think.
Oh my gosh. So William leaves after hearing this, right? And Anna shows up at the bookstore later because she's like, you disappeared or whatever. And he said, oh, well, I had to leave. And then he just makes some excuse, right? So she tells him she's leaving and she's bought something for him. And it turns out that it's a Chagall painting that she's brought specially for him from her house, right? And earlier in the film, they had, she had seen that he had one. And so she decided, hey, I want to bring this gift for him. And she talks about, telling him to open it later or whatever. So she also admits, hey, I've behaved badly twice, and that she just didn't know how to call him and make things right between the two of them. And then he came to see her, and so that gave her a little bit of hope. So she asked if, hey, look, can we spend some time together? And then that's when he tells her, hey, look, I overheard what you said. And just when they're getting to this point, of course, he's interrupted. William is interrupted by a call from his mother because remember, they're at the bookstore. And so his, employee comes, is like, your mother is on the phone. And he's like, oh, tell her I'll call her back. And he's like, no, I think you got better take this call because her foot that she told you the other day is blue is now black or something. And I'm like, his mother's foot is like rotting and that's not funny. It shouldn't be funny. But whatever is going on with his mother, like, is interrupting this opportunity for, this romantic moment. And this is just the story of William's life, So he comes back after he talks to his mom on the phone and he does something I was very surprised about. And he tells Anna, no. He's like, no.
Can I just say no to your request, your kind request?
Can I just say no to your kind request?
But so he expected to be cast, see what I did there, aside again.
Once again, cast aside as I would absolutely expect to be.
Right, and he's inexperienced, right? So he don't know anything about any of this and how it's going to happen. All he knows is that this has happened multiple times with her, and whatever happened with his other relationships ended the way that they ended.
Yeah. And so William goes on to say to her that, he's in real danger with her. And he's like, he just says that he fears that his heart will not recover if he's cast aside again, like what you were talking about.
Yeah.
My relatively inexperienced heart would, I fear, not recover.
And this was the answer to why earlier, like, you like her so much, why did you throw her phone number away? You know what I'm saying? That number that could have connected you to her sooner.
Because nothing had changed, right? Like the last thing we left off with was, I'll regret this forever.
Yeah.
Right. And then like, yeah, that whole thing with how bad it is when the woman he loves is paralyzed, I believe. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and nothing changed. So somebody give me her number. Why would I call this person?
Yeah. So I don't know. It's like that thing where, you want these people together, they want each other, but then there are circumstances that just seem to be complicating everything. So she tells him, she's like, well, this fame thing isn't really real.
Fame thing isn't really real,
And don't forget, and of course we get the line that is the repeated line, the most famous line from this film, which is, I'm also just a girl.
I'm also just a girl.
Standing in front of a boy.
Standing in front of a boy.
Asking him to love her. In my best Julia Roberts voice.
Asking him to love her.
But that's what she says. And again, it brings us back to this idea of I'm just a regular person, even though I make $15 million a film. It's like she's saying, look, even though the fame is not real, I'm also just a girl.
Yeah.
It's a girl. So like I am some of the things maybe, and in the context of her admissions, right? All this stuff, but I'm just a girl.
It sums up basically what I was saying there. It's just about, she's just a regular person, right?
Yeah.
No, despite all the fame, celebrity, all that.
And in spite of this amazing line, she leaves the shop and he lets her. He just watches her walk on out. For those of you who don't know, you should visit axiom.app and you'll be able to look at all of the recent videos across all of our channels. And I'm putting that on the screen right now just so y'all can see it and see what it looks like. Because there are a ton of videos that are over there. And also, I think that there are at least about 100 exclusive videos that are available for our Patreon members and our YouTube members. So, if you're interested in more of our content, as I've seen many of you binge watching, be sure to check those things out. So then William tells his friends, he gathers them all together
later.
later.
A whole council on love.
And he's wondering if he made a good decision. Hey, this is what happened. Did I make the right decision? His friends are like the most supportive. They're all like, yeah, you made the right decision. They're basically supporting him, but you can kind of tell a little inkling that they're like, why did he pass this up?
Because there's this one shot like when this happens and then he starts talking, but then they just pan across his
everybody's
friends,
face.
and it's just...
And so then Spike is late, but Spike comes in and Spike is told what happens. And then Spike is like, nah, you ain't make the right decision, And so he's the only one who does not support this decision. And what's so hilarious is then the rest of the group agrees that he should give her a chance. And he is convinced to give her a chance. And he repeats the just a girl line, he told his friends even the line, I'm just a girl, right? That she said to him. And, just like everybody watching was just like, oh, they were convinced. His friends were convinced when they hear this too, And so William decides to try to catch Anna before she leaves forever, presumably. Why in these movies is it always like this? Like
always.
You've got to run down
race against time.
Planes, trains, automobiles to catch the person before they leave town. Now, because look, it's not like when you land, you're going to not love them anymore. Like, why is this such a big deal?
Because
it's now
you could
or
easily
never.
lose contact back in the 90s.
That's probably true.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, number change, that's it. You never hear from that person until Facebook comes along and everybody gets on it in the teens.
Yes. So William decides to try to catch Anna before she leaves. And they all pile into the car and they're going to head to her hotel first. But now remember, one his best friend one of his best friends wound up in a wheelchair. She can't hop in. So he's like, well, where is she? And her husband's like, oh, she's not going. So you see her on the sidewalk next to the car, like, y'all go ahead, catch her, right? Because she doesn't want to slow them down. Her husband gets out and he picks her up. Spike climbs into the, what would be called, the boot of the car in London.
The boot.
He climbs into the trunk of the car so he can ride in the trunk so that she can basically ride in the lap of her husband, because her husband wasn't going to leave her behind. Even though she said, leave me, you know, go ahead and whatever. He wasn't going to leave. So then everybody's in the car now. They're piling in and they're driving crazy or whatever. And at one point the traffic is terrible. They can't get across the street. And Spike hops out of the car and stops traffic to let them get through so that they can get to where they're trying to go. And then what is hilarious, now, up to this point, you know, Spike has been acting like a nut. Prior to this, though, we find out that William's sister is engaged. She's like, well, I'm engaged because everybody has news, you know, somebody's gotten fired, somebody's got but the news that's maybe opening new doors in their life, right? So she's jealous. Well, I'm not going to say jealous, but she's like, well, I have news too. And they said, well, what is it? And she's like, well, I'm engaged to be married and such and such. And they're like, oh, you're engaged? Well, who have you been dating? Because we ain't heard nothing about this, right? Because these friends get together regularly and you have dinner and stuff like that. And then she announces it. Then she turns to Spike and whispers to him during this dinner that, well, you're the one I'm marrying, you know, right? And he was like, well, sure. Yeah, that'll work, you know? So now her and Spike are this couple.
Yeah.
And so in the car, he's getting out and she's like, oh, you're just the most wonderful. Like, because Spike has stopped, you know, for the sake of love, all for love, so he can catch this woman he loves. Spike hops out of the car. So they leave Spike in the, you know, in the roadway as they drive off. So they finally make it to her hotel. She's checked out of the hotel. Now, mind you, she uses these cartoon names as her fake name whenever she's in the hotel. He doesn't know what name to ask for in order to find this out. So then you got to go through some comedy with that. And then they're like, oh, but she's giving a press conference before she leaves. So he's like, all right, well, we got to get over there. And Spike reunites with them because he's run, I guess, the rest of the way to where they are at the Ritz. So then William goes to this press conference. He's got to, again, pretend to be a journalist to get in to see her because he hasn't been invited. And he does. And then he's just standing there. And while she's being interviewed, somebody asks her, well, you know, how long are you intending to be
to stay in the UK?
Yeah, in the UK. And she's like, oh, well, I'm leaving, you know, I'm leaving now, basically. And so he gets the opportunity to ask a question. And William asks if she would reconsider them being, oh, no. Somebody asks, another person asks a question and they're like, oh, well, there was a guy, you know, or whatever. And whatever happened to him, the guy you got photoed with and whatnot. And she's like, well, I think we're still friends, I think. And she's quiet kind of about that. And obviously this is a sore point for her. So then William gets to ask a question and then she realizes, oh, he's there, you know, and he's like, well, would you reconsider being more than friends with this guy, you know? And then they're telling him, they're like, his name was Thatcher. Mind you, this is Thatcher. This is William Thatcher. And, you know, another one of the journalists is like, yeah, the guy you're talking about, his name is Thatcher. So you don't know what Thatcher looks like exactly, but you're just, you know, helping out. But anyway, I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
And she says yes. And now then she, you know, goes through and basically bottom line is she says, well, now I'm planning to stay in Britain indefinitely. And then the next scene is their wedding.
Yeah.
And then we see him accompanying her on the red carpet. And then the final scene of the film is they're back on that same bench in that garden. And this time she's pregnant and lounging across his lap with her feet up on this bench while he reads. And that's how the film ends. So, you know, it was a happily ever after. And I was like, oh, he got the girl. She got the guy. Well, you know, of course she could get the guy before, but, you know.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this? Well,
I think the name Thatcher could be like kind of it's just a little nod over there, you know, possibly. Maybe I made a connect. I don't know. I've got to go through all kind of interviews and stuff to see. Because this was my first time watching the movie.
Okay, so I saw it when it came out over 20 years ago. But it was like watching it brand new, because this wasn't a movie that I remember watching ever again. So watching this, I had no idea what was going to happen. It was like the first time I watched it just now. I didn't remember it. Only thing I remembered is the line from the movie, but I couldn't have given any context. So I was pleasantly surprised, but what I realized was this was a movie that was a great rom-com that had a lot of subtext to it that on the surface could seem quite simple, but when you peel back even a layer or two, you realize that what's going on here, the dynamics are very complex.
Yeah, those are the best comedies, right?
Yes.
And people don't always understand the brilliance of comedies like that, because some of them, they focus too much on, the slapstick aspect or on the comedy itself and not putting much into the story of that pushes the comedy. Basically, they use the comedy to push the narrative that may or may not be there.
Well, I also want to talk about, how do we feel about William's decision to take Anna back, or to go get Anna after he turned her down? Because was Anna just a victim of her celebrity and fame, or did she have some real responsibility for, kind of the stickiness, the icky sticky of their situation? Like, was she completely free from fault? Because there were points in the film where I was like, girl, you messing up.
According to the movie? Or according to
in
my
real life?
thoughts?
Let's talk about our thoughts now, because we've seen what the movie presented,
Yeah, so there's no, she wasn't no victim of whatever, right? You come from a area of privilege. You try to use that privilege to shield you from everything. I didn't tell you about my boyfriend because of this. I don't want anybody to know about us because, you know what I'm saying? It's that same, and you're using that as a shield to claim victimhood on this, because you have I have so much. It's terrible.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. And I feel like a simple thing could have been early on, when you realize you were kind of feeling this guy, he's feeling you, after you've already kissed him, the first encounter you've had with him, before you're inviting him up to your room, I think she could have just said, hey, it's complicated. Yeah. I do have, I've been talking to, I have a whatever.
But you may expect people to already know all of this too.
I think, yeah. So, because everybody else seemed to know it, right?
Yeah.
The people that, because when it comes out that she has a boyfriend, the friends are all like, well, you didn't know?
Like you always bringing up something. I'm like, I didn't know that. I didn't know so-and-so had a kid or was dating so-and-so back in 2011. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I know nothing about this stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess a lot of other people do know.
Well, and if you live long enough and you kind of keep your finger on the pulse of popular culture, then you can remember these things. And then at some point, it just is too many things. But yeah, because it's funny, because you were saying to me yesterday or the day before, you were like, you just know everything about Whitney Houston, don't you? And I was like, maybe a lot of things as a super fan for, most of my life. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a super fan of Alicia Keys, but you probably know more about her than me.
Alicia Keys? Oh,
yeah.
You probably know more about her music.
Yeah.
And I know the popular songs, and then I know, whatever is presented in pop culture. So yeah. But I don't know. Like, there was just something, if I just suspend my disbelief, like you have to for a lot of films, then I'm okay with it. But like, if I bring it over into the real life realm, I feel like Anna is selfish in some ways and would need to grow in some ways, because William just felt like a complete victim of whatever was going to happen. And even Anna's,
Right. But what is this movie? It's the opposite of Pretty Woman, basically, or all of those rich man tropes, right? Made a Manhattan and all those movies where it's, a regular woman gets to get with the rich guy.
Oh, you're right about that. And in this case, it's a regular guy gets to get with
the rich and famous actress.
But I would say, how much money did this guy have? Because, I mean, honestly, he's talking about that, his bookstore isn't doing well and whatever. But see, there is the difference between like being destitute And and you know, like,
But look, he had to be a roommate with this weird guy, right? You seen the car they had to pile up in to go and chase the old girl down. But it's even the one who we would think of as successful, the stockbroker Bernie, doesn't have any money. He's not successful. Yeah.
You know, but so this brings me to this discussion about like happiness and what things are important and all of that, because you know, all of these characters in here had life happening to them, and in some way they all were very lucky to, you know, except I guess Bernie, but Bernie even had a hopeful toward the end, but like they were all very lucky to at least find companionship and love, if nothing else, right? To at least find that.
And then that's how to make it seem like we're all the same. Even if one is rich and famous, we all just trying to get love, you know? But it's even better for Will because, okay, he get love, but then he get the money too. So, you know, he ain't got to worry about that aspect of your life.
Yeah. But somebody who's so humble and so, you know, and just so meek is now out in the world. And, you know, the machine is at him. He's with the paparazzi because he's got this burden of being with a famous woman. And this isn't the lifestyle he would have chosen, right? Because you can see that he is a very personable individual. It's about what's going on in each person's life, and his friend group, that they all cared about what was going on in each of their lives. This is just part of their exchange. So I really did enjoy that part of showing how people can be and interact, and the hopefulness, right? That even you never know when something is going to happen or how things are going to turn out. And sometimes in life, even when you feel really unhappy about a circumstance, like, you know, Bernie and his job, and, you know, at the end, Bernie gets fired, but Bernie is like happy, but, you know, like he's free. That gave him the freedom he needed. Bernie could have walked out on his job at any point he wanted, but he never did, right?
So, yeah. Do you know the guy who won American Idol?
Yes.
From Mississippi? What's
last
his
name is Roberts. Jamal Roberts.
Jamal Roberts, right? So they say that he just wants to be a teacher, right?
Yeah.
Like he doesn't want the life.
Right.
And I guess he just went on the show for whatever, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of that, like, and I think of, it reminds me of a film, Night on Earth, like the first story in Night on Earth. It's some, it's a famous actress. Hold on, let me look it up. Winona Ryder is a taxi driver, and it's the first story.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and she is basically somebody who's in film and stuff. It's like, oh, basically, I like you. You want to be in a movie? And she's like, no, I'm cool. I just want to be a mechanic, you know? And it's that sort of thing of, like, everybody doesn't want that life, but to most people, it seems like it's just so glamorous and stuff. And we have these different types of careers and stuff that we think that everyone just wants to be involved in because of how it's been glorified.
Yeah. And, you know, we even talk about kind of the interesting thing, personalities and stuff like that with kind of what we do, right? And the thing is, in order to do something you love, you might have to put yourself out there more than what you really want. Now, I think the thing that's different now is so many people literally just want to be famous and known versus people who want to do a thing or an art, you know, like we love talking about movies and discussing movies, and we've, you know, had other paths that we've taken in the past, right? But none of those were about the pursuit of people knowing us or, you know, of trying to stand out and be famous. It just is talking about things we enjoy or doing things that we enjoy. And I think that is the distinction in a lot of ways with stuff. And then the other part is art. Whenever you participate in art, then you know, kind of have that dilemma, because if art is consumed by a large number of people, then they're just going to know you, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but, you know, to kind of wrap this up, to me, I really liked, again, the movies that I like are the ones that make me think about other things. And then I'm able to take myself down this path of consideration of whatever the themes that are presented here. And I think about, you know, romantic love and how, you know, her dream was right in front of her versus
Yeah.
people who just want to have appearances.
And basically to the idolization, right? So we didn't have access to celebrities back then, right?
No.
So, but now when we see them on social media all the time and stuff, we kind of just start to not like them or get over that whole magical, mysterious thing, right? So when when she met Will's friends, they were like, "Oh, you're Anna," and blah, blah, blah. But then when they find out who she is and what she done to their friend, then they
like
over
her.
that.
Yeah. They were done with her. They were the American. They chimed in, and that's true. And what I also love that it highlighted too, though, was the strength of friendship and that, love of one another. And the other part is, okay, so women, so I'm considering something now, and I hate that it's the 11th hour, but what it was Will actually saying that he loved romantically the friend in the wheelchair, or was he just saying generally, hey, look, I'm new at this, I've only ever loved 2 women?
Was one his sister? You know what I'm saying? So I don't think so.
Help us in the comments with this, because
so.
This is just the thought that I had now. But yeah, you're right. He wasn't like, my mother, my whoever. So I don't know, but because I'm just thinking about like what an extraordinary person he would have to be to watch somebody live his dream. Man, we've talked about that a few times.
Yeah.
But to watch his friend, someone else who he knew, to be with the woman he loved. That has to be, and to continue to interact without any type of hostility.
Well, it's just something I think that's not confronted, right? Because that's what his character showed. So even with Anna, he didn't really confront the things that was going on head on, right?
Yeah.
He just walked away.
Yeah.
He turned around and was like, all right.
And the only time that he tells her no is when he's forced to, for his own self-preservation, right? Hey, no, do you mind if I say what? I forgot.
The very British way of saying it. Can I just say no to your kind request?
I want to start saying that, even though I'm nowhere near British. I would love to say that. Can I just say no to your kind request? I think I'm going to start.
But Americans have that too, though. They were like, can you pass me the bread if you really didn't mind? Would it be too much for me to ask you to blah, blah?
Yeah, but that's always, it's up the same alley. Yes.
Yeah,
it's up the same
that's
alley.
in us, basically.
It is. So then I feel okay that I'm going to put that in my repertoire now. I was going to say, do you mind if I say no to your kind request? And I'll say it with a smile too. But anyway, so that has been wonderful. We hope that you have had a wonderful birthday, Tish. We appreciate.
Happy birthday.
Yes. And we appreciate getting a chance to travel back in time and to examine this film that we would probably not have discussed anytime soon.
If you made it this far, type, I'm just a girl, even if you're a guy, in the comments so we'll know you're one of the real ones who stick around to the end.
And be sure to check out one of the videos that's on the screen right now. And also be sure to visit axiom.app, where you'll find all of our recent videos from all of our channels in one place and links to them back on YouTube so you can watch them here.